My boyfriend was secretly dating my best friend. I secretly dated her dad. I'd been with Ethan for 2 years, and my best friend Chloe had been single that whole time. Or so I thought. Chloe would come over for wine nights and complain about dating apps while Ethan played video games in the other room. She'd ask me for advice about guys who ghosted her, and I'd comfort her saying she'd find someone amazing. She was at every birthday, every holiday dinner, every celebration we had as a couple. Ethan would barely talk to her, acting like she was just my annoying friend he had to tolerate. Looking back, that should have been the first sign since Ethan never shut up around anyone else. The discovery happened by accident when I came home early from a work trip. My flight got moved up 6 hours, but I didn't tell Ethan because I wanted to surprise him with his favorite takeout. I walked into our apartment and heard voices from the bedroom. Not just voices, but Chloe's specific laugh that she did when she was nervous. Then Ethan saying she looked better in my sundress than I did. I stood in the hallway listening to my best friend of 10 years and my boyfriend of 2, discussing how I was too boring in bed, and that's why they had to find each other. Chloe said I was getting suspicious about her dating life, so they needed to be more careful. Ethan said I was too stupid to figure it out, and they'd been doing this for 8 months without me noticing. 8 months of Chloe crying on my shoulder about being single while going home to my boyfriend. 8 months of Ethan pretending to work late while meeting her at her apartment. 8 months of them sitting at my dinner table eating food I cooked while playing footsie under the table. I left without confronting them and went to my sister's house to think. She wanted to go slash tires, but I had a better idea. Chloe's dad, Bruce, was 51 and divorced for 3 years after her mom ran off with her trainer. He was actually attractive for someone's dad, owned a construction company, and had been lonely since the divorce. I'd met him plenty of times at Chloe's family events, and he always said I was the daughter he wished he'd had instead. Perfect. I started by running into Bruce at the coffee shop near his office. Total coincidence. Definitely not planned after Chloe mentioned his routine. We chatted about construction, and I mentioned needing help with my apartment renovations that didn't exist. Bruce offered to take a look as a favor to his daughter's best friend. He came over when Ethan was at work, and I wore yoga pants and made sure to bend over a lot while pointing at imaginary problems. Bruce started texting me about other things I might need fixed. I always needed something. The sink that worked fine, the door that wasn't squeaking, the light fixture that wasn't broken. Bruce would come over and I'd make him lunch as a thank you. Fresh sandwiches, homemade soup, cookies still warm from the oven. Bruce mentioned he hadn't had home cooking since his divorce. I said it was nice cooking for someone who appreciated it since Ethan never noticed. Bruce started staying longer, talking about his business, his divorce, how Chloe never visited him anymore. Week 3, I suggested we grab dinner after he fixed my perfectly functioning garbage disposal. We went to a steakhouse and Bruce insisted on paying since I'd been feeding him lunch for weeks. We had wine and talked until the restaurant closed. Bruce walked me to my door and said I was special and any man would be lucky to have me. I kissed him on the cheek and said he made me feel appreciated. The actual relationship started the next week. Bruce would take me to nice restaurants on the nights Ethan was supposedly working late but actually with Chloe. We'd go to concerts and museums and all the places Ethan said were boring. Bruce bought me flowers every week and little gifts just because he thought of me. He treated me like I was precious while Ethan treated me like I was convenient. Meanwhile, Ethan and Chloe got sloppier. They'd forget their lies and mix up stories. Ethan would smell like Chloe's perfume. Chloe would accidentally mention movies she'd seen that she'd supposedly watched alone. They thought they were so clever sneaking around, but really they were just cruel. After 2 months with Bruce, I invited everyone for Thanksgiving dinner. My parents, Ethan's parents, Chloe, and surprise guest Bruce. When Bruce walked in, Chloe dropped her wine glass. She stammered, asking why her dad was there. I smiled at everyone in the room and took Bruce's hand. Bruce is here because I invited him as my date. Chloe's face went white like someone drained all the blood out of it. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Ethan looked confused, his eyebrows scrunched together. He asked why Chloe's dad would be my date. I squeezed Bruce's hand and smiled even bigger. Bruce squeezed back, his warm hand wrapped around mine. He had no idea what was about to happen. I told everyone that Bruce and I have been dating for 2 months now. My voice sounded calm and clear. Chloe's legs gave out and she dropped onto the couch. Her hands were shaking so bad she couldn't hold anything. The wine from her broken glass spread across my carpet in a dark red stain. My mom gasped. Ethan's dad leaned forward in his chair. Bruce kept holding my hand, still not understanding why everyone looked so shocked. Ethan's face changed. I watched it happen in slow motion. First confused, then thinking, then his eyes got wide. He knew. He knew that I knew. His mouth opened and words started tumbling out. He said it wasn't what I thought. He said he could explain. He said we should talk privately. Chloe stared at her father with pure horror on her face. Her eyes were huge and filled with tears. My parents sat frozen on the love seat. Ethan's parents looked at each other, then at their son, trying to figure out what was happening. The turkey sat on the table getting cold. Nobody moved to eat. I let go of Bruce's hand and stood up straighter. I told everyone that Ethan and Chloe have been having an affair for 8 months. My voice didn't shake. I said I have proof. I came home early from a work trip and heard everything they said about me. Chloe started crying, big, ugly sobs that made her whole body shake. She begged me not to do this. She said we could talk about it later. She said please don't do this in front of everyone. But I was done protecting her feelings. I was done being the stupid one they laughed about. Bruce's hand went stiff in mine. He turned to look at me. His face had this confused, hurt expression like a dog that got kicked. He asked if that's why I approached him. His voice was quiet. I saw the exact moment he understood. His daughter had betrayed me, and maybe I had used him to get back at her. Ethan's mother stood up fast. Her chair scraped against the floor. She demanded to know if this was true. Her voice was sharp and angry. Ethan started talking fast, saying no, saying it was a misunderstanding, saying I was being crazy. But Chloe was sobbing too hard to back up his lies. Her face was buried in her hands and her shoulders shook. The front door opened and my sister walked in. She was late like always. She looked around the room and I watched her take it all in. Chloe crying on the couch, Ethan standing there looking guilty, Bruce's hurt face, my parents' shocked expressions. She walked straight over to me and stood next to me. She crossed her arms and glared at Ethan. Bruce pulled his hand away from mine. The loss of his warmth felt like a punch. He turned to face Chloe. He asked her directly if she'd been sleeping with my boyfriend. His voice shook. I'd never heard Bruce sound like that before. Betrayed, disappointed, hurt. Chloe couldn't even look at him. She kept her face buried in her hands. That was answer enough. Bruce's whole face seemed to collapse. The strong construction company owner who always stood tall looked like someone had knocked the air out of him. He took a step toward Chloe, then stopped. His hands hung at his sides. I started talking again. I told everyone exactly what I heard that day. How Ethan said I looked worse in my sundress than Chloe did. How they talked about me being too boring in bed. How Chloe said I was getting suspicious and they needed to be more careful. How Ethan called me too stupid to figure it out. My dad's face got red. My mom started crying quietly. Ethan's parents turned to look at their son with fury in their eyes. Ethan's dad stood up and pointed at Ethan. He told him this was unacceptable. Ethan's mom looked like she wanted to slap him. Ethan tried to defend himself. He said I was boring. He said I was distant. He said I didn't pay attention to him. He said that's why he had to find someone else. My sister cut him off before he could say more. She asked if being bored gave him the right to lie to my face for 8 months. Her voice was loud and angry. She asked if being bored meant he could mock me with my best friend. Bruce stood up suddenly. The movement was so fast it made everyone look at him. He walked toward the kitchen. I could hear him breathing hard, like he couldn't get enough air. Chloe jumped up from the couch and followed her father. She was still crying. She kept saying, "Dad, Dad, please." Bruce stood by the sink with his back to everyone. His shoulders were tight. Chloe reached for him, but he pulled away. She started trying to explain. She said she didn't mean for it to happen. She said she fell in love. She said she never wanted to hurt anyone. Bruce turned around and looked at his daughter. He told her he was ashamed of her. His voice broke on the word ashamed. He said he couldn't believe she would betray someone who loved her like family. He said I had been nothing but good to her for 10 years. The pain in his voice made my stomach twist. I realized right then that I had hurt him deeply by using him this way. He was a good man who didn't deserve to be a tool in my revenge plan. Ethan's mother stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. She pointed at Ethan and her voice came out sharp. She told him to pack his things and get out of this apartment. She said they didn't raise him to be this cruel. Ethan's father nodded and said this behavior was unacceptable. Ethan looked at his mother with wide eyes. He started to say something, but she cut him off. She said she was ashamed and disappointed. Ethan turned to look at Chloe on the couch. Chloe had her face in her hands and wasn't looking at anyone. She was still crying. Ethan stepped toward her, but she didn't move. He called her name, but she didn't respond. Bruce was still in the kitchen, and I could hear him breathing hard. Ethan's father walked over and grabbed his son's arm. He told him to go pack a bag right now. Ethan pulled his arm away and said we should all calm down. My dad stood up and told Ethan to do what his parents said. The room felt too small with everyone standing. My mom came over and put her arms around me. She hugged me tight and said she was proud of me. She said I was brave for standing up for myself. Her words should have felt good, but they didn't. I felt empty inside. Like I'd won something but lost more. My sister stood next to me with her arms crossed. She glared at Ethan the whole time. Bruce walked back from the kitchen. His face looked different. Older somehow. Tired. He stopped a few feet away from me and just looked at me. His eyes had this hurt in them that made my chest tight. He asked me quietly if any of our time together was real. His voice cracked on the word real. Everyone in the room went silent. Even Chloe stopped crying for a second. I tried to find the right words. I told him it started as revenge. I admitted that. But I said it became real. I said my feelings for him were genuine now. I said I cared about him. Bruce shook his head slowly. He looked down at the floor. He said he needed time to think. He said he needed to figure out if he could trust anything between us. He turned and walked toward the door. Chloe jumped up from the couch. She called out to him. She said, "Dad, please wait." But Bruce didn't stop. He didn't even look at her. He just opened the door and left. The sound of it closing felt final. Chloe stood there staring at the closed door. Then she spun around and looked at me. Her face changed from sad to angry in seconds. She screamed that I destroyed her relationship with her father. Her voice was loud and raw. She said I had no right to use him like that. Something hot flared up in my chest. I yelled back that she destroyed our 10-year friendship. I said she slept with my boyfriend and laughed about how stupid I was. I said she sat at my table and ate my food while lying to my face. Chloe's mouth opened, but nothing came out. My sister moved closer to me. Ethan took a step toward us. He said we should talk privately. He said we could work this out. My sister moved fast. She got between Ethan and me. She told him to get out. She said he needed to leave my apartment right now. Ethan's mother grabbed his other arm. She told him to go pack his things. She said he could stay with them tonight. Ethan's father went with them to the bedroom. I could hear drawers opening, things being thrown into a bag. Ethan's mother looked at me. She said she was sorry. She said she had no idea her son was capable of this. She looked like she might cry. My mom kept her arm around me. Chloe stood in the middle of the room. She looked lost, like she didn't know what to do. Ethan came back out with a duffel bag. His dad had another bag. Ethan tried to catch my eye, but I looked away. His parents pushed him toward the door. He said my name once. Quiet. But I didn't respond. The door closed behind them. Chloe looked at me one more time. Her face was red and wet. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something. Then she just shook her head and left too. The apartment got quiet. Just me, my parents, and my sister. My legs felt weak. I sat down on the couch where Chloe had been sitting. The wine stain on the carpet looked dark. My mom sat next to me. My dad stood near the kitchen. My sister locked the door. Then it all hit me at once. The revenge didn't feel good. It felt hollow. I started crying. Not pretty crying. Ugly sobbing that shook my whole body. My sister sat on my other side. She put her arm around me. I told them I cared about Bruce. I said I genuinely cared about him. I said I hated that I hurt him. My mom rubbed my back. My sister held me tighter. I cried until my throat hurt, until my eyes burned. The Thanksgiving food sat on the counter getting cold. Nobody had eaten anything. The next morning I woke up in my bed. My phone was on the nightstand. I picked it up. 17 missed calls from Chloe. I scrolled through them. She'd called over and over, starting at midnight, then 2 in the morning, then 4. There was one text. From Bruce. It just said we should talk when I was ready. My stomach dropped reading it. I got up and walked to the kitchen. The apartment still smelled like turkey and stuffing. All the food was still out. Nobody had put it away. I felt sick looking at it. The dinner that never happened. I started putting containers in the fridge. My hands shook. 3 days went by. Chloe kept calling. I didn't answer. My sister came over and helped me clean. She asked if I'd heard from Bruce. I showed her the text. She said I should meet him. She said I owed him that. My phone rang while we were talking. Different name. Ariel from work. I answered. Ariel asked if I was okay. She said she heard what happened. I asked her how she knew. She said it was all over our friend group. Someone told someone who told someone else. I realized Chloe or Ethan must be telling people. Probably their version. Making me look bad. Ariel said she just wanted to check on me. I thanked her and hung up. I texted Bruce back. I said I was ready to talk if he was. He responded fast. He suggested coffee. We picked a place halfway between us. I got there early, sat at a corner table, watched the door. Bruce walked in exactly on time. He looked bad. His eyes had dark circles under them. His hair wasn't combed right. He looked like he hadn't slept since Thanksgiving. He sat down across from me. We ordered coffee. Neither of us drank it. Bruce said Chloe had been calling him constantly. He said she kept trying to explain, trying to apologize. He said he couldn't even look at her right now. His voice was flat, empty. I didn't know what to say. Bruce leaned forward. He looked right at me. He asked me directly why I chose him for revenge. The question hung in the air. I could have lied, but I didn't. I told him the truth. I said I engineered our first meeting. I said the apartment repairs were fake. I said I wore yoga pants on purpose. I said I made him lunch to keep him coming back. Bruce listened. His jaw got tight. His hands gripped his coffee cup. I watched him process everything. Every dinner, every concert, every time I kissed him. He was seeing it all through new eyes. Seeing the manipulation, the calculation, the revenge. I said I didn't set out to hurt him. I said the first meeting was planned and the repairs were fake. But somewhere between his 3rd visit and our 10th dinner, I stopped thinking about revenge. I stopped counting how many times I made him laugh, or how many stories he told me about his business. Bruce stared at his coffee cup. He asked when I knew it changed. I told him it was the concert. The one where he sang along badly to every song and didn't care who heard him. He looked happy. Free. I realized I wanted to keep seeing that look on his face. Bruce's mouth got tight. He said Chloe showed up at his house 2 nights after Thanksgiving. She was crying so hard she could barely talk. She kept saying she fell in love with Ethan and didn't mean to hurt anyone. Bruce told me he sat there listening to his daughter make excuses and felt sick. He said loving someone doesn't make cruelty okay. He said betraying your best friend for 8 months while crying on her shoulder isn't love. Chloe tried to explain that she and Ethan connected, that they understood each other. Bruce said he told her she needed to take responsibility for choosing to hurt me every single day for 8 months. Chloe left his house and hasn't called him since. I asked Bruce if there was any chance for us. Any way to start over without all the revenge and lies hanging over everything. Bruce looked at me for a long time. He said he didn't know. He said every time he thought about us now, he wondered what was real and what was strategy. He said he needed time to figure out if he could trust me. My chest felt tight hearing that. I realized I might lose him because of how this started. I left the coffee shop feeling worse than when I arrived. 3 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. The voice said his name was Lucas, Ethan's best friend. I remembered him from a few parties. Lucas said he needed to talk to me. He said he had no idea about the affair. All those times he covered for Ethan saying he was working late or helping Lucas move furniture were lies. Lucas said Ethan told him everything after Thanksgiving. He said Ethan was staying at his apartment temporarily and was a complete mess. Drinking too much, not showering, obsessing over what happened. Lucas said he felt terrible for unknowingly helping Ethan cheat. I told Lucas it wasn't his fault. Lucas said Ethan kept talking about how stupid he was, how he threw away 2 years for someone who didn't even really care about him. I didn't feel sorry for Ethan. I hung up and checked my email. New message from Chloe. Long paragraphs. I started reading. She wrote about how the affair started. How she and Ethan were both at my birthday party last year, and how they ended up talking in the kitchen while I was opening presents. How Ethan said he felt unappreciated. How Chloe said she felt invisible. How they kept texting after that night. I deleted the email before finishing. Her excuses didn't change anything. 8 months of lies. 8 months of them laughing at me. 8 months of her sitting on my couch pretending to be my friend. My sister came over that weekend to help me pack Ethan's stuff. His clothes still hung in the closet. His toothbrush sat by the sink. His books filled half the bookshelf. We started pulling everything out. My sister found a shoebox in the back of his drawer. Inside were hotel receipts. Dozens of them. Different hotels, different dates. All from the past 8 months. My sister kept digging. She found a phone I'd never seen before. A cheap burner phone. She turned it on. Messages between Ethan and Chloe. Hundreds of them. Planning when to meet. Talking about how to avoid getting caught. Making fun of things I said. My sister looked at me. She said the proof of how elaborate their lies were should make me feel less guilty about Bruce. She was right. They didn't just betray me. They built an entire secret life. My phone buzzed later that night. Text from Bruce. He said he'd been thinking about us constantly. He said he wanted to try having an honest conversation without Thanksgiving hanging over us. He suggested meeting at a park. Neutral ground. Somewhere we could walk and talk. I agreed. We picked a time for the next day. I got to the park early. Walked around the pond. Watched ducks swimming. Bruce showed up exactly on time. We started walking. Neither of us talked at first. Finally, Bruce said he couldn't stop thinking about me. He said he missed our conversations. Missed hearing about my day. Missed making me laugh. I told him being with him made me feel valued. Made me feel like someone actually saw me. Ethan never asked about my work. Never remembered my favorite foods. Never cared if I was happy. Bruce did all those things without me asking. Bruce stopped walking. He said those feelings sound real. I said they are real. I said maybe they started fake, but they became real somewhere along the way. Bruce started walking again. He said Chloe called him yesterday. She said I was manipulative. Said I seduced her father just for revenge. Said I was a terrible person. Bruce said he wanted to hear my side. He wanted to know who I really was. I took a breath. I told him about the woman I was before I heard Ethan and Chloe in my bedroom. I told him I was the kind of person who made homemade soup for sick friends, who remembered birthdays, who believed people when they said they loved me. Then I told him about the woman I became after. The one who wanted to hurt the people who hurt her. The one who used his loneliness against him. The one who bent over in yoga pants on purpose. I said both versions were me. Bruce listened. He said his divorce left him feeling worthless. His wife left him for someone younger. Someone more exciting. He said when I showed interest, it felt like maybe he wasn't as broken as he thought. He said my attention meant everything to him. I realized we were both hurt people who found each other. Both vulnerable. Both looking for something to make the pain stop. We kept walking. Kept talking. 3 hours passed. The sun started setting. Bruce said the situation was complicated, but maybe complicated didn't mean impossible. I said I wanted to try. Really try. Not revenge or strategy. Just two people seeing if something real could grow from messy beginnings. Bruce said he wanted that too, but he needed to go slow. Needed to rebuild trust. I told him slow was okay. Slow was better than nothing. We walked back to his truck in silence. Bruce opened my door. Helped me in. Drove me home without the radio on. At my apartment door, he turned to face me. He said he needed time to think. Time to figure out if what we had was real or just revenge wrapped in pretty dates. I nodded. My throat felt tight. Bruce touched my cheek once. Then he left. I went inside. Sat on the couch where Ethan used to play video games. The apartment felt different now. Empty in a new way. Not just because Ethan was gone, but because I might lose Bruce too. My phone buzzed. Text from my sister asking how it went. I told her Bruce wanted space. She said that was probably smart even though it sucked. I agreed. The next 3 days passed slowly. Work felt strange. Normal tasks seemed pointless. I kept checking my phone. No messages from Bruce. Plenty from blocked numbers that were probably Ethan. I deleted them without looking. Friday night, someone knocked on my door. Hard. Repeated. I looked through the peephole. Ethan stood there swaying. His shirt was wrinkled, hair messy. He knocked again. I opened the door with the chain still on. He stank like whiskey. His eyes were red. He started talking fast, saying he made a mistake. A huge mistake. He loved me. Always loved me. Chloe meant nothing. Just a stupid fling. He wanted to come home. Wanted to fix everything. I stared at him. This man I spent 2 years with. Who called me boring and stupid to my best friend. Who spent 8 months lying to my face. He reached for the door, tried to push it open. The chain held. I told him no. He said please. Said he lost everything. Lost his job. Lost his apartment. Had nowhere to go. I said that wasn't my problem. He said I was being cruel. I laughed. Actually laughed. Told him Cruel was mocking me in my own bedroom. Cruel was 8 months of lies. Cruel was making me cook dinner while he played footsie with Chloe under my table. Ethan started crying, real tears running down his face. He said he was sorry. So sorry. He made a terrible mistake. I said his mistake lasted 8 months. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. He kept begging, getting louder. I pulled out my phone, called Lucas. He answered on the second ring. I told him to come get Ethan. He was drunk at my door. Lucas said he'd be right there, 10 minutes tops. Ethan heard me. Started yelling that he didn't need Lucas. Didn't need anyone. Just needed me to forgive him. I closed the door, locked it. Ethan kept knocking, kept talking through the door, saying he changed. He was different now. He understood what he lost. I sat on the couch, listened to him ramble. 15 minutes later, Lucas knocked. Different knock, calmer. I opened the door. Lucas stood there looking embarrassed. Ethan was slumped against the wall. Lucas grabbed Ethan's arm, pulled him up. Ethan tried to shake him off. Lucas held firm. He looked at me, said he was sorry. Again. He didn't know about the affair until Thanksgiving. Didn't know Ethan was lying about work. I told him it wasn't his fault. Lucas nodded. Then he said something else. Said Ethan lost his job 3 weeks ago. Called in sick too many times. Always on days he was meeting Chloe. The company fired him for excessive absences. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Good. There were consequences. Real ones. Lucas dragged Ethan toward the stairs. Ethan looked back at me. His face was a mess. Tears and snot. He said he loved me. I closed the door. The next morning, my mom called. Asked if I wanted to come for dinner. Just family. I said yes. Showed up at 6. My dad hugged me at the door. Mom had made pot roast, my favorite. We sat at the table. Made small talk about work. About my sister's new job. About their neighbor's annoying dog. Then Mom asked about Bruce. Her voice was gentle. Careful. She said they were worried. Worried I was getting hurt again. I set down my fork. Told them Bruce was a good man. A really good man. He got caught in my revenge plan. He didn't deserve that. I was trying to give him space. Let him decide what he wanted. Dad asked if I wanted Bruce to choose me. I said yes. More than I expected to. Mom reached across the table. Squeezed my hand. Said sometimes good things come from messy situations. Sometimes we have to work through the mess to find what's real. I nodded. Dad said Bruce seemed like a decent guy at Thanksgiving. Before everything exploded. Said he saw how Bruce looked at me. Like I mattered. I felt tears start. Pushed them back. Mom said they'd support whatever I decided. Whatever happened with Bruce. They just wanted me to be happy. Actually happy. Not settling for someone who treated me like I was convenient. We finished dinner. I helped with dishes. Drove home feeling lighter. Less alone. Monday morning, I got a message on social media. From someone named Jerome. Chloe's uncle. I remembered him from family events. Tall guy. Always told bad jokes. The message said he heard what happened. Wanted me to know Chloe's behavior didn't represent their family. They raised her better than that. He said Bruce was devastated. Really struggling. But Chloe was starting to understand what she did. Starting to see the weight of it. I stared at the message. Didn't know what to say back. Jerome added that he always liked me. Thought I was good for Chloe. Kept her grounded. He was sorry she threw that away. I typed a simple thank you. Sent it. Put my phone away. I folded the letter back into its envelope. Put it in the drawer of my nightstand. Under some old receipts and a random phone charger. Not throwing it away felt important somehow. Like keeping proof that she at least tried to own what she did. My sister came over that evening with Chinese takeout. We ate on the couch while some reality show played in the background. She asked if I'd heard from Chloe. I told her about the letter. She set down her chopsticks. Asked if I was going to respond. I said no. She nodded. Said I didn't owe Chloe anything. Not forgiveness, not acknowledgement, not even a reply. She said some people think forgiveness is required to move on, but that's garbage. Sometimes the healthiest thing is to just let people sit with what they did. I asked if that made me a bad person. She looked at me like I was crazy. Said absolutely not. Said Chloe betrayed 10 years of friendship and laughed about how stupid I was. Said that deserves consequences. Real ones. Not just a nice letter where she feels better about herself. We finished eating. She stayed until midnight, talking about nothing important. Her new job, our parents, the neighbor who plays music too loud. Normal stuff. It felt good. Like I could be a regular person again instead of someone constantly thinking about betrayal and revenge. 3 days later, Bruce texted. Asked if we could meet for coffee. I stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. We agreed on Thursday afternoon. Same coffee shop where we'd first run into each other. Or where I'd staged running into him. The irony wasn't lost on me. I got there early, ordered my usual. Sat at a table by the window. Bruce walked in exactly on time. He looked better than at the park. Less tired. His shoulders weren't as tense. He got his coffee and sat across from me. We made small talk for a minute. Weather, traffic, nothing real. Then Bruce set down his cup. Said he'd been spending time with Chloe. Trying to work through everything. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face neutral. He said she was genuinely sorry. Really struggling with what she did. I wanted to say she should struggle. That she earned every bit of guilt. But I just nodded. Bruce continued. Said they'd had some hard conversations. Really hard. About the affair. About me. About why she made the choices she made. He looked older talking about it, tired in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. Bruce said Chloe admitted something during one of their talks. Said the affair made her feel powerful, desired. Like she was winning some competition she didn't even know she was in. She never thought about the real damage. Never considered that I was an actual person with feelings. Just saw me as an obstacle between her and what she wanted. Bruce's voice got rough saying this. He looked out the window. Said he was disappointed in her. More than disappointed. He didn't know he'd raised someone capable of that kind of cruelty. I felt something crack in my chest. Not for Chloe. For Bruce. Because he was trying so hard to love his daughter while hating what she'd done. He said their relationship would never be the same. He'd forgive her eventually because she was his daughter. But trust was gone. Maybe forever. The easy closeness they used to have was dead. I reached across the table, touched his hand. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. I pulled my hand back. This felt too intimate for what we were now. Whatever that was. I asked the question I'd been avoiding. Asked if he'd decided what he wanted. Regarding us. Bruce took a long breath. Said he'd been thinking about nothing else for weeks. He cared about me. Really cared. But he worried we were built on a foundation that couldn't support anything real. Revenge and manipulation. Lies and strategy. He didn't know if we could ever trust each other completely. Didn't know if every moment together would be tainted by how we started. I wanted to argue. To say we could move past it. But he was right. I'd seduced him on purpose. Calculated every move. Used his loneliness against him. That doesn't just disappear because I caught feelings later. Bruce said he didn't want to lose me completely. Didn't want to throw away what we'd built even if the foundation was cracked. But he needed time. Needed to figure out if we could be something healthy. I nodded. My throat felt tight. Bruce suggested we try being friends first. No romance, no pressure. Just rebuilding trust slowly, getting to know each other without all the weight of secrets and revenge. I agreed. Said if we were meant to be together, we needed to start from honesty. Not from the calculated seduction that began everything. Bruce smiled a little. Said he'd like that. We finished our coffee. Made plans to meet again next week. Same time, same place. He hugged me before leaving. It felt different from before. Less charged, more careful. Like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile. The next month passed slowly. Bruce and I met every Thursday for coffee. We talked about everything. His business, my work, our therapy sessions, the ways we were both trying to heal from different wounds. The conversations felt genuine in a way they hadn't before. When I wasn't performing. When he wasn't being seduced. We were just two people trying to figure out if we actually liked each other. I told him about my childhood. My parents, my sister. Things I'd never shared during our dates because I'd been too focused on making him fall for me. Bruce talked about his divorce. Really talked about it. Not the surface version he'd mentioned before. He said his ex-wife leaving destroyed his confidence. Made him feel worthless. Unlovable. That's why my attention had meant so much. Why he'd fallen so fast. We were both vulnerable people who found each other at the wrong time. Or maybe the right time, but the wrong way. Hard to tell. I looked forward to Thursdays. To seeing Bruce without any agenda except enjoying his company. It felt lighter. Easier. Like maybe we could actually build something real from the wreckage. A mutual friend called me on a Tuesday. Someone who'd known both me and Ethan for years. She said Ethan had asked her to reach out. He wanted to meet. To apologize properly. To explain himself. I felt my jaw tighten. Told her no. She tried to convince me. Said Ethan was really struggling. Really sorry. I cut her off. Said I didn't need Ethan's apology to move forward. That him feeling better about himself wasn't my responsibility. He should focus on becoming a better person for his own sake. Not for mine. She went quiet. Then said she understood. I hung up feeling lighter. Like setting that boundary freed something in me. Ethan didn't get to control my healing by making me listen to his excuses. I got to decide when and if I ever wanted to hear from him. Right now, the answer was never. Lucas texted me a few days later. Said he'd been meaning to reach out. Wanted me to know Ethan was in therapy. Actually working on himself. Acknowledging how cruel he'd been during the affair. How he'd mocked me, betrayed me, used me. Lucas said Ethan was finally taking responsibility. I read the message twice. Typed back that I appreciated him telling me. But I had no interest in reconciliation or friendship with Ethan. Ever. Lucas responded immediately. Said he completely understood. Just wanted me to know Ethan was trying to change. I put my phone down. Part of me was glad Ethan was getting help. The other part didn't care. His healing was separate from mine. I didn't need to forgive him or acknowledge his growth to move on with my life. That realization felt powerful. Like I was taking back control he'd stolen. Another letter arrived from Chloe. Shorter this time. Just one page. She said she was moving to a different city. Needed to start over. Give everyone space to heal without constant reminders. She wrote that she hoped someday I could forgive her. But she understood if that never happened. She wasn't asking for anything. Just wanted me to know she was leaving. The letter felt different from the first one. Less about making herself feel better. More about accepting consequences. I put it with the other one. In my nightstand drawer. Maybe someday I'd throw them both away. Or maybe I'd keep them forever. Reminders that people can change even when relationships can't be saved. Thursday came again. Bruce and I met for coffee. He seemed distracted. Kept stirring his drink without drinking it. I asked if everything was okay. Bruce said Chloe was moving. To Portland. She'd gotten a job there, needed distance from everything that happened. He said it was partially his suggestion. He'd told her space would help everyone heal, give them room to rebuild their relationship without the constant weight of what she'd done. Bruce looked sad saying this, but also relieved. Like he needed the distance too. Needed to not see her every day and remember she'd betrayed someone he cared about. I asked how he felt about it. Bruce shrugged, said he was her father. He'd always love her. But right now he needed space as much as she did. Too many reminders. Too much hurt. Maybe with time and distance they could find their way back to each other. But the relationship they had before was gone. They'd have to build something new. Something honest. Even if it was smaller and more careful than what they'd lost. My mom called on a Wednesday afternoon. She wanted to know if Bruce and I could come for dinner that weekend. Just the four of us. She said she wanted to get to know him better without all the drama hanging over everything. I checked with Bruce and he agreed immediately. He seemed almost eager for it. Like he wanted my parents to see him as more than just the guy who got caught up in my revenge plan. Saturday evening we drove to my parents' house. Bruce brought flowers for my mom and a bottle of wine for my dad. The gesture made my chest tight because it showed how much he cared about making a good impression. My mom hugged him at the door like he was already part of the family. My dad shook his hand and led him to the living room to talk about construction projects. I helped my mom in the kitchen while Bruce and my dad bonded over renovations and building codes. My mom kept glancing toward the living room with this soft smile. She whispered that Bruce seemed like a really good man. Kind. Genuine. The type who would treat me right. I told her he did. That he made me feel valued in ways Ethan never had. She squeezed my hand and said she was glad something good came from all the hurt. Dinner went smoothly. Bruce told stories about his construction company and the funny things that happened on job sites. My dad laughed at all the right moments. My mom asked Bruce about his interests and hobbies. He talked about concerts and museums, all the things we'd discovered we both loved. My parents exchanged these knowing looks across the table, like they could see this was real between us. Not just revenge or manipulation, something that had grown into actual feelings and connection. After dessert, my dad took Bruce outside to show him the deck he was planning to build. My mom pulled me into the kitchen to help with dishes. My sister showed up just as we were finishing the dishes. She'd texted earlier asking if she could stop by. I knew she wanted to check on how dinner was going. She gave me a quick hug, then joined Bruce and my dad outside. Through the window, I watched her talking to Bruce. She was probably grilling him with questions, making sure his intentions were good. When they came back inside, my sister grabbed my arm and pulled me down the hallway to my old bedroom. She closed the door and turned to face me with this serious expression. She said she could see that Bruce really cared about me, that the way he looked at me during dinner was genuine, full of warmth and affection. She admitted she'd been worried at first that this whole thing was just about revenge, that I was going to hurt Bruce and myself in the process. But watching us together changed her mind. She thought maybe something good could actually come from all the mess. Maybe Bruce and I could build something real and lasting. I sat on my old bed and felt tears prick my eyes. I told her I was hopeful, that I wanted this to work more than anything, but I was also scared. Scared of getting hurt again after everything with Ethan. Scared of hurting Bruce worse than I already had by using him at the start. My sister sat next to me and put her arm around my shoulders. She said relationships that start messy can still become beautiful if both people are willing to work at it. Bruce seemed willing. So did I. That was what mattered now. 3 weeks later, Bruce surprised me with concert tickets. The band we'd both mentioned loving during one of our early coffee dates. Back when we were still just talking and getting to know each other. I couldn't believe he remembered. We drove to the venue on a Friday night. The place was packed with people. Bruce held my hand as we made our way through the crowd to find our seats. The lights dimmed and the music started. Being there felt different from anything we'd done before. Like a fresh start. No pretense, no hidden plans. Just two people enjoying something together because they wanted to. Bruce sang along to the songs he knew. I leaned against his shoulder and felt genuinely happy. Not the forced happiness I'd felt with Ethan toward the end. Real happiness that came from being with someone who treated me well. After the concert, we walked back to Bruce's truck slowly. Neither of us wanted the night to end. Bruce stopped under a streetlight and took my hand in both of his. He said he was ready to try dating again. For real this time. With complete honesty between us. No more questions about how we started or why. Just moving forward together. I felt my throat get tight with emotion. I told him I wanted that too. But I was scared of messing it up. I cared about him so much. More than I'd expected to when this all started. The thought of losing him because I made mistakes or hurt him again made my chest ache. Bruce pulled me closer and said we'd figure it out together. That's what people do when they care about each other. They work through the hard stuff instead of running away. The next week, we sat down at Bruce's kitchen table with coffee and had a serious conversation about our relationship. We needed ground rules if this was going to work. Complete honesty about everything. No hiding feelings or problems. Regular check-ins about how we were doing. Talking through issues instead of letting them build up. Bruce said trust had to be rebuilt through actions, not just words. He needed to see consistency from me. Proof that I was committed to this for real. I agreed completely. I told him I'd be open about everything. My therapy sessions, my feelings about Ethan and Chloe, any doubts or fears I had. Bruce promised the same. He'd tell me when something bothered him instead of staying quiet and letting it fester. We shook hands across the table like we were making a business deal. Then we both laughed because it felt ridiculous to be so formal about a relationship. But we both knew we needed this. Clear expectations and boundaries. I decided it was time to introduce Bruce to my work friends properly. Not as a secret I was hiding, but as my actual boyfriend. I invited Ariel and 2 other colleagues to happy hour at a bar downtown. Bruce met us there after work. He wore a nice shirt and seemed a little nervous. I introduced him to everyone and explained how we met. The real version this time. Not hiding anything. Ariel shook his hand and studied him carefully. She asked him questions about his business and his interests. Bruce answered honestly and made everyone laugh with stories about construction mishaps. By the end of the night, Ariel pulled me aside near the bathroom. She said Bruce clearly treated me well. She could see it in how he looked at me and listened when I talked. She approved completely. Said I deserved someone who made me happy after everything I'd been through. The validation from my friends made me feel lighter. Like I was finally building a life I could be proud of instead of hiding parts of it. Bruce invited me to a work event at his construction company. A barbecue for all his employees and their families. He introduced me as his girlfriend to everyone we met. The pride in his voice made me feel special. Like he was genuinely happy to have me there. Several of his employees mentioned they'd never seen him this happy since his divorce. One older guy said Bruce had been pretty closed off for years. Focused only on work? Never talking about his personal life. But lately he'd been different. Smiling more. Taking time off. Actually enjoying life again. The comments made me realize we were building something real. Something that other people could see and recognize as genuine. 4 months after Thanksgiving, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Ethan's mother's voice came through the line. She apologized immediately for calling. Said she'd been meaning to reach out for months. She wanted me to know how sorry she was for her son's behavior. How he'd treated me was unacceptable. She and Ethan's father had cut him off financially until he proved he was actually changing. They'd made him move out and get his own place. Find a new job. Start therapy. She said they hoped I could find happiness after everything. I thanked her for calling. Told her I appreciated her reaching out. But I'd moved on completely. Found someone who treated me the way I deserved. She sounded relieved to hear that. Said she was glad I was doing well. After we hung up, I felt nothing about Ethan. No anger, no hurt, just complete indifference. He was part of my past. Bruce was my present and hopefully my future. An email from Chloe appeared in my inbox one morning. The subject line said sorry. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. The message was brief. She said she was in therapy working on herself, really examining why she'd done what she did. She wrote that she was genuinely happy I found someone who treated me well. Jerome had shared a photo of Bruce and me together at some family event. Seeing us happy had made her realize she'd made peace with everything. She wasn't asking for forgiveness or friendship. Just wanted me to know she was trying to become a better person. I closed the email without responding. Maybe someday I'd feel ready to acknowledge her attempts at redemption, but not today. Today I was focused on moving forward with Bruce. Bruce and I had our first real fight on a random Tuesday evening. We were at his house making dinner together. I asked him about something that had been bothering me. How he sometimes avoided difficult conversations. Changed the subject when things got uncomfortable. Bruce got defensive immediately. Said I was being too pushy, too demanding. I pushed back saying communication was one of our ground rules. We couldn't avoid hard topics just because they were uncomfortable. The argument escalated. Voices raised. Both of us frustrated. Then Bruce stopped mid-sentence. Took a deep breath. Said we were doing exactly what we promised not to do. Shutting down instead of talking through it. We sat at the kitchen table and actually discussed the issue. Bruce admitted he had a habit of avoiding conflict from his marriage. His ex-wife had been explosive during arguments, so he'd learned to just stay quiet. I explained I needed him to tell me when something bothered him, even if it was hard. We worked through it by actually communicating. No yelling, no walking away. Just honest conversation until we understood each other. After we'd resolved everything, I felt almost proud. We'd fought and fixed it in a healthy way. That felt like proof we were building something that could last. My therapist's office had those leather chairs that made squeaking noises every time I shifted positions. I sat there picking at my cuticles while trying to explain the guilt that kept me up at night. She asked me to describe what specifically made me feel guilty about Bruce. I told her it was the way his face looked when he realized I'd used him. The hurt in his eyes when he pulled his hand away from mine at Thanksgiving. The fact that I'd engineered our first meeting and manipulated every interaction until it became real. She wrote something in her notebook and asked if I regretted dating him at all. I said no, because somewhere between the fake repairs and the real dinners, I'd fallen for him completely. She pointed out that Bruce was still with me despite knowing the truth. That he'd chosen to stay and work through it. That maybe I needed to forgive myself the same way he was learning to forgive me. I scheduled another appointment and drove to Bruce's house afterward. He was in his garage organizing tools when I arrived. I stood in the doorway watching him for a moment before speaking. I told him I'd just come from therapy, and we'd talked about the guilt I carried. Bruce put down the wrench he was holding and turned to face me. I asked him directly if he still hurt when he thought about how we started. He was quiet for a long moment before admitting that yes, sometimes it still stung. Knowing I'd approached him with a plan instead of genuine interest. But then he said something that made my chest tight. He told me he'd decided to focus on who we were now instead of dwelling on how we began. That every relationship starts somewhere, and ours just had a messier origin story than most. He said what mattered was that we were both choosing each other now with full honesty and clear eyes. I moved closer to him and took his oil-stained hands in mine. I told him I was choosing him too, and I'd spend however long it took proving that my feelings were real. Bruce invited me for dinner at his house the following week. He cooked steaks on his grill while I made a salad in his kitchen. We moved around each other easily like we'd done this 100 times before. The evening felt calm and domestic in a way that made me realize how much had changed since Thanksgiving. We ate at his dining room table with candles lit between us. Bruce poured wine and we talked about work and my parents and his latest construction project. Normal couple things that felt significant because they were so ordinary. After dinner, we moved to his couch and Bruce turned the TV on, but neither of us really watched it. He pulled me close against his side and I fit there perfectly. We sat in comfortable silence for a while before Bruce shifted to look at me directly. His expression was serious and my heart started beating faster. He told me he needed to say something and he wanted me to really hear it. I nodded and waited. Bruce said he loved me, that he'd fought against it for weeks after Thanksgiving because he didn't want to love someone who'd used him. But he couldn't help it. He loved the way I laughed at his terrible jokes, the way I listened when he talked about his business problems, the way I made him feel like he mattered. He loved me despite the messy beginning and he needed me to know that. I felt tears building in my eyes as I told him I loved him too. That I'd been scared to say it first because I didn't think I deserved it after what I'd done. But I loved him completely and genuinely. Bruce kissed me and it felt different from all our other kisses. It felt like a promise. We stayed up late talking about everything. I admitted that our beginning was wrong and messy and I wished I could go back and meet him differently. Bruce said he understood, but we couldn't change the past. All we could do was build something real and honest moving forward. He said what we had now was worth fighting for, regardless of how it started. I fell asleep on his couch that night with his arm around me, feeling more secure than I had in months. 6 months after Thanksgiving, my apartment looked completely different. I'd redecorated and gotten rid of everything that reminded me of Ethan. New couch, new bedding, new kitchen table where Bruce and I ate breakfast together on weekends. My life had transformed in ways I never expected when I'd stood in that hallway listening to my boyfriend mock me. I had a relationship built on honesty and mutual respect. Bruce valued my opinions and made me feel appreciated every single day. We'd established boundaries and communication patterns that made me feel safe. I'd learned to speak up when something bothered me instead of staying quiet and resentful. My therapist said I'd done real work on myself and it showed. I'd set better boundaries with everyone in my life, not just Bruce. I'd stopped accepting behavior that made me feel small or unimportant. My sister said I seemed lighter somehow, like I'd put down a weight I'd been carrying. Bruce and I were planning a trip to the coast for my birthday. He'd booked a bed and breakfast and made reservations at restaurants he knew I'd love. We spent evenings looking at photos of the area and planning what we wanted to do. The excitement I felt about our future was genuine and uncomplicated. I'd learned that revenge didn't heal betrayal. Confronting Ethan and Chloe at Thanksgiving had felt satisfying in the moment, but it didn't erase the hurt they'd caused. What actually helped was building a life I was proud of with someone who treated me well. Bruce made me coffee every morning and kissed my forehead before leaving for work. He texted me throughout the day just to check in. He listened when I talked about my problems and offered actual solutions instead of dismissing my concerns. The contrast between him and Ethan was stark, and made me grateful every day that I'd discovered the affair. My parents had Bruce over for dinner regularly now, and my dad actually liked talking to him about construction and business. My mom said she could see how happy I was, and that's all she wanted for me. I'd stopped checking Ethan's social media months ago because I genuinely didn't care what he was doing. That indifference felt like the real victory. I stopped at the coffee shop near my office on a random Tuesday morning. The line was long and I was scrolling through my phone when someone said my name. Jerome stood behind me holding a briefcase and smiling warmly. I hadn't seen him since before Thanksgiving and felt awkward for a second. He asked how I was doing and seemed genuinely interested in the answer. We ordered our coffees and Jerome suggested we sit for a minute if I had time. I texted work that I'd be a few minutes late and joined him at a small table. Jerome started by saying he'd heard about everything that happened. He wanted me to know that Chloe was doing better now. She'd been in therapy for months and was really working on herself. He said she'd moved to a different city to give everyone space and was building a new life there. Jerome mentioned she'd sent him a photo recently and she looked healthier and more at peace. Then he brought up Bruce. He said he'd seen Bruce at a family gathering a few weeks ago, and he seemed happier than Jerome had seen him in years. Really genuinely happy in a way he hadn't been since before his divorce. Jerome said whatever Bruce and I had together was clearly good for him. I felt relief hearing that other people could see how real our relationship was. Jerome finished his coffee and stood to leave. He told me he was glad things had worked out, and that sometimes life takes unexpected turns that end up being exactly what we needed. After he left, I sat there thinking about everything that had happened. The path to Bruce had been complicated and messy and morally questionable. I'd used him for revenge and hurt him in the process. But somehow we'd built something genuine from that messy beginning. I had someone who truly loved me and treated me with respect. Bruce had someone who made him feel valued and appreciated. Chloe was working on becoming a better person. Even Ethan was supposedly in therapy trying to change. I finished my coffee and walked to work thinking about how sometimes the best revenge really is just living well. Finding genuine happiness with someone who sees your worth. Building a life you're proud of instead of staying stuck in bitterness. I had all of that now with Bruce, and it felt better than any revenge plot ever could.